Okay, this is happening. So welcome. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. And in pre-pandemic times, we would be hosting office hours in our very space, usually Saturday mornings with a reading following in the afternoon. It was a lovely tradition, and we will definitely get it back on its feet in the post-pandemic days that are ahead of us. A couple notes I just wanted to say are we're still doing, so the Bureau is still closed. Our physical store is closed. The LGBT Community Center is still closed. And we have no idea when that's going to change, but you know, vaccine news is giving us a little hope here. So hopefully in a few months. But what we have been doing are events like this. So we have online events that we've been doing on Zoom. And afterwards, we post them on our YouTube channel. So if you've missed any events, you can go there and check that out. And I will post this event on there as well. And we're super excited. A couple months ago, we launched an online store. And now we have over 400 titles on there, which is super exciting. So please check that out. That's bgsqd.com/store. And we also have gift certificates. So that's a great way to support us in these COVID times. We appreciate it. And we also appreciate all the people who donated for tonight's event. All of that really helps us out to keep doing what we do and to help us plan for the future. So I'm going to turn the stage over, this virtual stage over to Sarah Sala, Queen of Office Hours. So please put your hands together for Sarah and let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here on Friday, for taking time out for poetry and for friends. I know this is one of the strangest seasons, I'm just calling COVID a season, that I've endured. And I know a lot of us are feeling exhausted. And I think we have to honor that, right? My partner sent me something today that said, you know, if you're functioning at like 25% capacity, like that's fantastic, right? So we just have to remember that we are living through this very strange time, but I'm super grateful for this online community through Greg at the Bureau, that we can still, you know, congregate in this wonderful space, and for all of our office hours poetry fellows this fall. We've been doing some really cool new things like reading books together, kind of having a virtual book club, doing like a power hour where we just log in and write together and then log off. So I think the pandemic has caused us to innovate in really cool ways too. So I'm going to introduce Laura Cresté, and then I'm going to step back and she's going to MC for tonight. So Laura Cresté is the author of You Should Feel Bad, which was selected for a 2019 Poetry Society of America Chapbook Fellowship. She holds an MFA in poetry from New York University and a BA from Bennington College. The winner of Breakwater Review's 2016 Persoff Prize, her poems have appeared in journals including No Tokens, Tinderbox, and Bodega. And she has received support from the community of writers. Please welcome Laura.
Thanks, Sarah. I like that intonation that you gave my book title. Also, my mom is trying to log on right now, so if one of you see her, can you let her in from the waiting room? I'm going to be reading two newer poems. These are pandemic summertime poems. And then I'll be reading one from my chapbook. So the first poem is called Solstice. I make a strawberry rhubarb cake and hope the bear doesn't take it as invitation. Hot enough to risk baking with the doors thrown open on the longest day of the year. He smashed the bird feeder, so now the goldfinches are gone. I was just starting to learn the difference between oriole and thrush, grosbeak and towhee. Couldn't track their songs, but remembered which birds are nervous and which cruel. Finches bully the chickadees, though finches are smaller. I grew up suburban, so I'm sentimental about everything wild. Craving foxglove for the name as much as the bloom. Charmed by chipmunks until they nest in my car. Yesterday in town, a bear was shot for breaking into a chicken coop. I hope it's not our bear, I say to my boyfriend as I lay traps for mice. Ours as if because we fed him once, we have a claim on him. On Mike's birthday, the poppies flare, and I forget for a while that everything is doomed. Cook linguine and give him a jigsaw puzzle of the birds of North America. I miss restaurants, how on my last birthday I ordered a whole brook trout that opened like an envelope, neatly deboned, the color of good paper. We won't be going home soon, but when the sun is high, I hang my dresses outside, all of myselves, a flock of me hovering. And this next one is called Overripe. Sometimes it's like this. Slugs discover the basil no matter where we plant it. Batshit on the welcome mat. I cave in the burrow between cherry tomatoes and rosemary. Every day the chipmunks dig anew until I fill the hole with sticks, menacing as the Blair Witch. After the rainstorm, I skim 1 dead frog, 3 dead newts, and 2 live ones from the pool. There are weevils in the sugar, weevils in the flour, and something in my bottle of vitamins sweet as candy. The late tomatoes split lewd as Jesus with his bloody heart, and the pool is topped off like my cup at the most expensive wedding I've been to, where the waiters never let me see the bottom of my glass. Last night, I saw lightning, or else the blue pulse of a device meant to drive rodents insane. Mike loves a never-ending task, so he collects twigs in the yard after every storm. But I believe in entropy and let it alone. Creeping Jenny spills over the wine barrel repurposed for planting, long and limp as my hair in college. I drive to the farm with a sign over corn on ice. Every corn has a worm, do not open to check. When I turn the ignition, a chipmunk crawls out of the hood and we astonish each other through the glass. A baby, which is what I called Mike when he muttered darkly, self-accusing, losing chess game after chess game, "Don't be such a baby." He didn't like that. I could sit outside and watch the daily dramas play across the yard. Instead, I shut the door and read about a weasel Annie Dillard saw 40 years ago. The truth is, I can't stop thinking of the dead frog. Something terrible happened to his skin, water repellent sliding off like jelly, a bubble taut across his mouth. My insurance stops covering my particular birth control, so I give it up and feel slightly more animal, sore breasts, and more so when I give up plastic for a shampoo bar and turn greasy from the coconut oil. When I was born, my aunt said my dark cap of hair felt like an otter's pelt. The radishes never take. Snakes undulate in the pool and leave their skins behind on the stone wall, like the flimsy dresses I'd shuck off as I climbed drunk into bed for years. The therapist in my phone asks if the meditation he prescribed is helping. Does it matter? I just need the summer to end, for the garden to die back a little. And for my last poem, I'll be reading a short one from my chapbook called Poem for My Children Born During the Sixth Extinction. The first things kids learn in school are the seasons. By now, they already know their colors, maybe even their last names. My children will learn hurricane and wildfire. It is summer and then it is winter. They won't know the sweet weeks of early June, honeysuckle, wearing a sundress without sweat pooling behind a knee, maybe even a little cold at night. They might not know bumblebees, not personally. Polar bears they'll read about like dinosaurs. We'll still have the old-fashioned disasters, a broken elbow, split lip. I'll try not to scare them, but when I see them eating unwashed grapes, I'll tell them about pesticides. One will forget, but the other won't eat fruit for years. When they ask if I believe in heaven, I will lie. When they're little, I want them to feel safe. When they're older, I want them to believe their bones will lie dumb in the earth forever. This is your one life. They'll want to know what their parents did before they were born. We had dinner parties, traveled a little, not enough, read our friends' books, had a dog they won't remember but will pretend to, and too many plants. Water damaged the windowsill and lost our deposit. When our spider plant mothered into 12 stalks, we potted them, called them the spiderettes. They were supposed to be housewarming gifts, but we didn't know 12 people moving. We tried not using too much plastic, not eating too much meat. It didn't matter. We knew our children's lives would get worse every year. We thought they might like to be here anyway, to give them oceans, ice cream, optic nerves, the flowers, and all their names. Thanks for listening. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next reader. Madeleine Mori is a white and Japanese poet originally from San Francisco. She earned a bachelor's degree in winemaking from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and an MFA from New York University. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Salt Hill, Sixth Finch, the Cincinnati Review, Jubilat, Diagram, and the American Poetry Review, among others. She is the poetry editor at Pigeon Pages and lives in Brooklyn. Please welcome Madeleine.
Thank you, Laura. I just love those poems you read. Okay, I haven't really been writing a lot during the pandemic, but I am going to read some of the last poems that I've sort of worked on or been really like excited about and editing. I've been getting a lot of editing done during this time, and particularly through my awesome colleagues in office hours. So this poem is called Remain. Tears slide up my cheeks into their ducts, your playlist reappearing as if you are still alive, the heat condensing coffee back into my mug. Poems pour into my brain, your Facebook profile unmemorialized. I sign no lease in Brooklyn. Do not accept the life you envision for me without you, because I am with you still. And it turns out there's no need for a treatment. The full fox withdrawn, blood samples injected in the port near your clavicle, scalpel sealing skin. There's no shock. There's no need to talk to a doctor about your stomach pains, non-existent. Your belongings fresh on your rehab bed. Your dad has come to drive you to San Francisco. We do not break up again. You get thrown into a bar, spit whiskey back into a dozen shot glasses, walk to our apartment. You are watching jokes and flubs, music videos, trailers for movies that haven't been released. As time adds to the bar across the city in which I love you, I'm tossing wine into a bin of green grapes, the buds just about to break. And then I'm going to read two sections of this long kind of lyrical essay I've been writing called Tasting Notes. That is after the poet Rebecca Lindbergh, and tasting notes in reference to my history as a winemaker and kind of processing various wine terms and language. So, diacetyl, a compound which can be produced in secondary malolactic fermentation that adds an intense buttery flavor to wine. Same compound found in microwavable buttered popcorn. Took a photograph that day where he became obsessed with wheat pasting a quote all around San Luis Obispo. There he is with his last $10, deciding on the cheapest paper, the most volume. There we are watching as the words are born, line by line from the printer, the ink warm and cream-like until it sinks into its own black finality. It is better to be violent if there is violence in our hearts than to put on the cloak of non-violence to cover impotence. Mahatma Gandhi. Photographs are signs which don't take, which turn as milk does. Roland Barthes, Camera Lucida. One must be careful of denaturing a protein, but whose idea of nature to consider? He and I both had our essentials, the order we created for ourselves, questioned until undone. As unnaturals, we chose each other, a new family. Casein is the main protein in milk and is used to clarify white wines by linking to the wine's naturally occurring proteins, dead yeast, grape skin. What's formed is called a polymer chain, one of the strongest chemical relationships. I was looking for something unbreakable when I met him. Vessel that I uncork, from which I screw out a tublet, like a cheese turner, pulling out one round nutty finger. I pour out your soul, though some drops remain clinging in the bottle. The time we decided to skip our classes and see Mulholland Drive together at the Palm Theater, and I was waiting for him at that iron bench in front of the ticket booth, and he rounded the corner in his green army jacket with the hood up, smoking a cigarette. How he bought us popcorn with extra butter and handed me a cup of free water, and when I removed the plastic top, he took it so gently from me. How later the show was starting up again, but we stayed outside singing to Sufjan Stevens' Kazimir Pulaski Day, and he was full of energy, walking, stepping in towards me, smiling, grabbing my waist, stepping back and wagging his finger to the rhythm. I was leaning against the brick wall with my head turned to him in love. And I'm going to read just one more section of this poem. And the section is called Earthy. Often found in medium-bodied to full-bodied red wines as a result of darkly aromatic fruit or moderate to heavy amounts of oak aging, typically positive. When we woke up without the usual relief that morning brings, us still so torn from the night before, and he simply got up and put on Vashti Bunyan's Look Aftering on the record player, and he slipped back into bed and we didn't say anything for a long time, just holding each other until the album was over, and then we started our day. He put the song Feet of Clay with the refrain, "Don't waste your life on me, my love," on his first mix CD for me. It's so quiet and empty when he's left. I feel like a landscape, a ground without a figure. Sharon Olds, Stag's Leap. When a conversation lulled or grew too square, he would break out into song, often one he loved from childhood, like Burl Ives' Ugly Bug Ball, where worms surprise the other bug guests with the most powerful final entrance from below. I wanted a sieve, a mask, I hate this word, cheesecloth, to breathe through that would trap it, whatever was inside everyone else that entered me when I breathed in. Marie Howe, Magdalene the Seven Devils. Diatomaceous earth is a sedimentary deposit, the fossilized remains of single-celled algae called diatoms that live in houses of silica. Perfectly fine for humans to consume, though I remember wearing masks when we ran our wine through the hard, dead bodies to filter it, to keep the mineral from coating our insides. Traditional to Georgian winemaking, kiveri, spelled with a Q or K, are giant earthenware vessels sealed with beeswax. They look like eggs, so the easy metaphor is womb. Such a large fermentation has dictated the kiveri be buried either underground or in the floor of a winery. The pressure of the surrounding soil keeps the vessel from bursting and maintains the temperature of the wine. Linda died, and Richard had a stroke, and Robin was in bed for 2 months. Each voice a harsh flash and accosting. Where my feeling should be churning, only sound, raw milk. But the annelids weren't afraid on the first full moon of March when the winter glass sharpened out of opacity and they could feel every molecule of field floor. All that sound failing to restrain each ring of their body, the moon's light close and blinding. Sous-bois is a French term used to describe wine with the smell of pure earth, leaves, mushrooms, autumn, what they called the humus layer in my soil science classes, the forest floor. As wines age, sous-bois can become quite loud. As people age, this is also true. Thank you.
Wow, what a last line. But Batty, I would read anything you have to write about wine and also anything about anything. I love your poems. Okay, our next reader tonight is Marty Correia. Marty writes memoir and poetry in the East Village, where she has lived with conceptual artist Kate Conroy since 1996. A graduate of NYU's creative writing program, MFA creative writing program, Marty is the author of the novel Pigeon Mothers, and her next project is the genderqueer memoir, Dear Dead Dad. It's a great title. Please welcome Marty.
Thanks, Laura. So as you know from that title, Dear Dead Dad, that there are a series of letters to two fathers that are in my life. One was one that I grew up with, and then there's one that I found who was my biological father just a year ago. So the first of these poems is about the one I just found, and then the next two poems are about the one I grew up with, just to be clear, because in the book, it's going to have context. So, the first time I saw you. This texted image is a picture of a creased, torn photograph. You, my father, my blood father, my sperm meets egg father, is in this family scene. The kind of 1960s print that makes me think that back then, nothing was in focus, and that every muted hue is really another color. Behind the 9 folks opposing is a Christmas tree, and the wallpaper looks like it could be holiday themed, but that's not possible, so it isn't. The 3 boys' clothing cast them in the roles I've learned they carried out. The tallest, a crew-cutted 20-something. He's a young man with earnest eyes. He pulls a young woman so tightly to him that her head tilts against his cardigan shoulder. He's the only one whose arm is around someone else. Another young man in a jacket, maybe about 20, in a white shirt and a skinny tie. His mischievous eyes make him the guy always at the ready with a wise-ass comment. He's the only one cracking a hint of a smile. The third brother is you. You are kneeling on the floor next to one of the sisters. You're wearing a gray sweater, but then again, it could be blue. The left side of your shoulder and chest is ripped away, the only place the photo's torn. You are not any more out of focus than anyone else, but your uncombed hair and pubescent features make you seem so. You're at that stage of puberty when your eyes and mouth are crooked, like Mr. Potato Head pieces clumsily slapped on by a toddler. Of course you're my father. You are disheveled and half missing. I dream up. You can't catch up on sleep. Keep moving. It was the worst advice anyone ever gave me. Okay, not the worst, but it was too easily proved wrong, at least for me. Maybe it was a poor person's prayer passed on to me, something to lean on when I wake up refreshed enough to crave a self less humble. I steal from work, from love, from movies, and from that seaside train I'll never ride again. My embezzled dreams are visited by dead prophets. Someday I'll tell you about George Harrison, John Lennon, Johanna, my old friend Paolo. But this is about the one you really got to believe to hear. My father played Sandman just once, spoke to me my fortune. It was a true dream. His voice quivered behind my eyes. You were supposed to have a future where everyone took you for a sheep, not a king. I think maybe I know you now. A poet is an uneasy citizen, always half dressed, half waiting. Abel, 1920 to 2011. I guess if I ever doubted I could live without you, I can and have. And if I ever feared to sculpt your name in the past tense, it wasn't that hard and it gets smoother. And if I didn't already grip it, the idea of you was what I wrote and what I blundered all those years, even before you died. I sketched out a discernible father, a short story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And for the past 9 years, I've remembered your birthday every September 30th, a marked improvement from when you were alive, when I woke on October 1st with blurred doubt of how many days hath September. I refused to memorize that rhyme and how menstrual cycles work in any constellations. I made it a half a century without a working definition of ovulation, and now I have no more eggs. April, May, and November, and the cloudless heavens, they're all blank slates. You never pointed out the Big Dipper, and I don't know any others. I'm not sentimental after dark. If I had to name your time of day, it's the civil servant twilight before you hit the time clock. It is 100 years since you were born at the tail end of the Spanish flu. I hear your father, Seraphim, praying into the New Bedford sky, the night of September 30th, 1920. Per voce Morfeo, live a long life and may you never see days so dark. In that instant, you knew as much about the stars' unhurried choreography as you would 91 years later. And if I count my inheritance, it is this luxury of ignorance. And these two poems have nothing to do with my dead dads. Fear of falling. Barefoot in Union Square, she asks how to be forgiven. My buried spleen, a poultice-encrusted horsehoof, never in the race. I beg, please leave me. Leave me to my meek failures, my recycled spirit as life shortens. Alexa knows. I tell Alexa who I am. She invites me into my day. Enjoy the sunshine, Yoko. She calms me. I see tangerines falling with the snow. And all the pigeons' wings spell J-O-H-N above Avenue A. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Marty. That was great. And for our next reader, we have Carrie Hohmann Campbell. Carrie is the author of the chapbooks Drawn to Extinction from Finishing Line Press and Incongruent Someday from Dancing Girl Press. She has degrees from Allegheny College and New York University. She lives in Northwestern Pennsylvania, where she precariously balances teaching creative writing at Edinburgh University, homesteading, and writing. Please welcome Carrie.
Perfect timing. My son just finished his bath, so he's going to be a little quieter now. So this first poem is entitled What It Means to Build a Whale. A small sadness balloons into a creature you never imagined these walls could ever contain. All the colors of the solstice are washed across its massive frame, bulbous and ready to burst into floodwaters. Its growth is gradual, then terrifying, and you are left wondering where it should remain since you cannot leave it inconspicuous. You realize too many people build things without understanding there will be repercussions, and that the real tragedy lies in the aftermath of creation. Let me find this next one. This next one is called Deciphering Owls. Walking to the barn at dusk, between loud crunches of snow underfoot, I hear the haunting call of a great horned owl roll across purple-shadowed fields. Its sonorous stuttering searches for a reply. By the time I've fed the rabbits and collected the eggs, carefully counting each chicken on the roost, the owl's call has echoed through the hemlocks, finding a counterpart over the next ridge. Owls are said to carry messages from beyond the grave, and I wonder whose communication I cannot translate, if bad weather or ill health is ahead. But after a day of internal clatter, wrangling a toddler, grading essays, general worry, their presence shakes my focus eastward. Before heading back inside, I lean against the fence post, imagine their dark bodies finding one another underneath a waxing moon. Let me find this other one. This other one The third one that I'm going to read is called Harvest. When the garden ripens in late June, we sit on the porch all morning, cobwebs of sleep still between our fingers, dew steaming in the white sun. My sister and I pull tops off beans, their green stalks poke through the basket's double weave. Each bean gongs the side of my bowl. Nearby, our mother hauls another bushel up, and clods of dirt shake loose as she sets it down with calloused hands. Our thumbs are red from pinching, tips sore from hundreds of decapitations. This one's quite new. It's called 400 Eggs. The data tells me I'll shed 400 eggs during my reproductive lifetime. And I wonder how many children a woman could possibly yield. By 1765, Mrs. Vasilyeva of Shuya, Russia, produced 69, 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and 4 sets of quadruplets. She lived to be 76, but her first name wasn't recorded, nor if she had a favorite flower or what she spoke into the graves of the only 2 who died in infancy. No, I will gladly lose any competition of that kind. 1 was enough until it wasn't. And I woke up during a pandemic one August morning feeling odd, as something foreign invaded my body, hijacked my brain. Everything gains urgency with uncertainty. Conceiving a child in the midst of upheaval seems careless. Although this isn't the first time I'm suspicious my body isn't my own, that I hold no sway over cellular function. But regrets can't register here. There's only time for present and future tenses. She will be amazing. Her 100 billion neurons, stars in the Milky Way, propelling her into herself. And the last poem that I'd like to read is from my chapbook. Oh, here it is. It's called Hold Your Horses, Cowboy. If I had this in the bag, then you'd be in a brown paper one from the state store, waiting for me to turn around, take off the whole kit and caboodle so I could get your dander up and jump the gun. I call things like I see them, and how I see things, teal eyes, tan boots, and a face that's forgotten the purpose of a razor are only half. There's no substitute for you, McCoy, so let's paint this town its favorite color and see how long it takes for the satellites to update their pixels before we go back to the drawing board. This time, give it a real shot in the arm. Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. I'm so happy that you read 400 Eggs. It's like one of my favorite poems. Okay, and our next reader is Sarah M. Sala, without whom none of this would be possible. Sarah is the author of Devil's Lake from Tolson Books out in 2020, the founding director of Office Hours Poetry Workshop and assistant poetry editor for the Bellevue Literary Review. She teaches expository writing at New York University. She has a dappled dachshund named Remy who begs her for food during all Zoom calls. And I hope that we get to see Remy at some point if he pops up.
Thank you, Laura. He was definitely just barking at the door. So hopefully he's a little more tempered during this reading. Thank you for that great intro. I'm going to read Whimsy. I have a series of poems from a second collection that revolve around migraines and headaches, the cheeriest subject matter of all time. This is called Whimsy. And if you're like, I can't wait to hear these edits because we just workshopped this, I haven't incorporated them fully. So this is the first version. Whimsy. When they enter my brain, the grass greens past its prime. Sky blue, now total sun. In the lake, the kids say, stay, watch over us. Their water wings cool tongues against my limbs. Later in the hot tub, my half skull soaks before slinking to a dark room. The cure for pain is inside the crane that flaps heavy over the house. Men used to call a headache a whimsy. And the other poems, I'm going to read from the Southampton Review. They have this cool, awesomely grotesque art that's on the front. And I mean grotesque as like an exciting descriptive verb there. So this is an excerpt from Migrainer. Once I hallucinated Mozart's piano sonatas for a full 5 minutes. When I told the neurologist, he laughed. Do you like Mozart? I asked, what is the root cause of migraine? He shrugged. 4 out of 5 women get them. August of 2017. My brain is a wall of flames. For 63 out of 92 days, some form of debilitating migraine, chronic headache, or neural hangover erases my words, flays my stomach, distorts my humor. In the darkest, most disorienting hour of the attacks, I meditate myself down to a speck of dust, a single atom hurtling through the universe at warp speed. Each time I fall into the abyss of a migraine, I don't know if I'll find my way back. I've taken to conjuring a poem, word by sedulous word, until I have the entire world in tow. From my mother's sleep, I fell into the state, and I hunched in its belly till my wet fur froze. 6 miles from Earth, loosed from its dream of life, I woke to Black Flack and the nightmare fighters. When I died, they washed me out of the turret with a hose. In the middle of my suffering, there was a poem, and it waved to me like a friend. There's a poem that's just like 21 repetitions of the same phrase. It's kind of just visually dramatizing all these headaches. All it says is, the more headaches you have, the more you will get. The more headaches you have, the more you will get. And here's none of them really have titles. They're all just multiple sections here. In Michigan, I once helped my dad clean a doe. He secured a rope over her back hoofs, then flung it up over the deck. In order to hoist her, I leaned into the peach of her fur, brushed the jet black hair of her eyelashes, avoided the coral slump of her gummy tongue. He warned me to avoid ticks. His initial knifing jagged, a ripping seesaw from chest to anus. I turned away. But I've never forgotten the plunge of the blade, the annihilation of her wild body. That same biting alterity snakes up my neck, colonizes the chamber of my cranium. Open me, you'll find a scree of glass. My brain no longer strung with pathways. And this will be the final uplifting poem that I read tonight. I always joke, like, poets are always like, oh, I'm so sorry to read all these sad poems for you. And I'm like, well, I once read a poem about gun violence at someone's birthday celebration. So we're just poets. We're thinking about these deep things. I know a woman who developed PTSD in response to her own migraines. Because they struck and debilitated her at any moment, at the first sign of a symptom, she full body panicked. Which is worse, a migraine or the simulation of a migraine? Have I always been myself? Or is the self a hallucination of existence? Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, Greg, at the Bureau. You're amazing. Let's think about happier things than migraines.
Thanks, Sarah. I don't think I had read that one in the Southampton Review yet, and that was really good. It made me really excited for Migrainer. Our next reader is Emily Hockaday. Emily Hockaday is the author of 5 chapbooks, including the forthcoming Beach Vocabulary from Redbird Chaps. Her poems have appeared in numerous journals, and along with Jackie Sherbo, she co-edited the anthology Terror at the Crossroads. Please welcome Emily.
Thank you so much, Laura, Sarah, and Greg, and to my whole cohort. Very excited to be reading with all of you today. This semester, I've been working on a series of body poems, so I'm going to read some of those. The first one is titled, Body as Destruction of the Proto-Universe. This morning on the commute to work, the smell of crack like burning plastic wafts as we cross the Williamsburg Bridge. I consider the metal in the subway pole and the metal in my own blood and the cosmic explosion that sent those metals here. I worry that I started this destruction, or the destruction of something. There is an appeal in learning the boundaries by trying to break them. Is that what I did with you? Running in the cold, dry air of this season brings the strong taste of copper into my mouth. I pull coins from under my tongue and behind my eyes. When they stop coming, I give you my teeth. Oh, see, I can't be trusted with them. Body memory. Overhead, the Amtrak sped forward into the future while we drank dark beer from pitchers and tasted the fragrant dusk. The watery movement of our romance caught the edges of the land. You'll remember the neon twists on the walks home, the wobbly curb, the glass bells in the East River surf. When the turbulence rolled us over ourselves, we held our breath and lost sight of the sky. Years later, I remember. The sun was a ripe peach, and we bit into it with our flashing teeth. Body position. We reach perihelion and then again, like every year, pull away. My body feels less and less like mine. Time spreads out like newsprint over skin. In what direction can I travel it? I have never been outside of time. Today I learned that physicists replicated the double slit experiment with molecules, while my own molecules become less elastic, move farther away from me, along with my edges. And this is one that I have to thank my cohort especially for because I brought this one to workshop. Body looking for the comet. Inside, the baby weeps, frightened by the oil painting that, in the dark, became a maw to another dimension. I turned its face to the wall to appease her. It has been 98 minutes since sundown and 34 months since you were on this earth. Over the southern horizon, Jupiter glows a brilliant white and Saturn hangs to the side. It is impossible to see the comet, a light smudge below the ladle. I found myself back here, pulling your rhubarb from beneath the tall pines behind this house where I learned to walk. The night is polluted. The sky is a wavy glass. The old yard looks different and the same. I tap into the dark pockets of my hollow heart. I want to see the comet. I emerged barefoot into the warm night, ginger over the dry, sharp grass, to see what so many others have called once in a lifetime. This next one is called Body on This Earth. Walking through the pine grove, I hear the owl. Because it is winter, dusk comes early and the sky breaks into pink ribbons. I have lived 34 years on this earth and never heard a wild owl. When I lay my 2-year-old daughter down for bed, she asks, "Will you stay with me, Mama Owl?" This is how I become avian. I dream of feathers and heights and white pine. I forget the tiny people scurrying below me. I have been here all along. And this is my last body poem for all of you. Thank you so much again. Body changing. The night is loud in the park. I sit on the fallen pine trunk, and if I listen long enough, the katydids start saying my name. This year, I saw 2 cicada shells with the neat, clean split right up the back. Metamorphosis was promised to me very young. A laurel tree, a crown of snakes, the protection that pain brings. Instead, my body changed within, bringing a new life all its own. My body split, but it wasn't me who emerged, bloody and glistening. She sits beside me, wriggling with impatience. She names the night music, cricket, katydid, cicada. She hears my voice, too, from the past, girlish and hopeful.
I love girlish and hopeful. And Emily, when is your next chapbook available?
I'm not sure. It's still like in production.
Cool. All right, well, I'm looking forward to it. All right, our next reader of the evening is Paco Marquez. Paco is a poet based out of Manhattan and author of the chapbook Portraits in G Minor from Folded Word Press 2017. His poems have been published by Fence, Apogee, Live Mag, and Huizache, among others. Originally from León, Mexico, Paco has spent most of his life in Sacramento and the San Francisco Bay Area. Please welcome Paco.
Thank you, Laura. Can you guys hear me okay? My connection has been in and out, so if it goes out, feel free to chime in. Thank you, Sarah, again, and Greg. I miss being at the Bureau so much, but happy to be here with you guys tonight, everybody. So I had a son about a year ago, so I wrote a son poem, and it's all just one long sentence. Son, at your 1 month of age, if given the chance to share one thing, I'll tell you that we come from a fairy tale, that we live in a fairy tale, and that we go to a fairy tale. Of what I know at 47, how we humans have evilized each other, our planet, landscapes I've seen pristine as the sky on a string, electric eels inside my spine, crimson longings pinned to a night. What little humans really truly know. More people alive today than the earth has years. And like in fairy tales, sometimes mothers break their own children like old dolls. And sometimes old dolls take on human flesh when they swim to the bottom of a lake. And fathers roll out eternity's red carpet day by day. You wouldn't believe me. You wouldn't believe. But look at your own 1-inch ear, my son. You too are but a goblin, tuned in to sound and to music. Next one, I'm gonna read a poem from Fence, came out at the beginning of the year. Petrol. Nada importa, nothing matters. Evil has won, the worst did happen, but we survived and hide happily, trying to find the others, find a way to peace and life for future generations out of sheer love. Find the others, web a web against the forces of the violent. Beautiful nature itself, pulling us down, pulling us back to the soil we are. Nothing matters, but those are just words. Conscience is the most secret bird housed next to a quiet window in the back of our body. Evil won, so we are forgiven for our idiocy as Mother Nature will hold us in outer space one day, away from gravity and earth, her bosom as to a baby. Nada en un río tibio, swim like a petrel flying underwater. And I tried this one. It's called Besides the World. You are older than yourself. There are so many ghosts inside every single one of us all. The wind helps us out. Our will swims in luminescent lubricant currents to create a new ghost all its own, just to pass along to other descendants. Our intent is the new will, attention, our currency. Love wants to flourish in my intention. I must not intervene, lest the entire living universe go awry. The parable is the riddle, is he who doesn't love his own dead, doesn't love nature. Not that it has to be bad, to die electrified with love, lightning 301 miles long, shaping this art into stone with water. The wind carves the coastline into an egret, which rises and flies just above the surface. This next one is The Surfer. Under the cloud's shadow glides an invisible summit, miles high, miles wide, inverse iceberg of your mother's tongue, her first whisper, your own future last. The heart tamer serves the summit top. The hermaphrodite knows how to love herself so that when fear screams itself into the mind heart of the human, she lands atop the cloud with music played backwards in time, butterflies everywhere, butterflies all around, ephemeral evaporation, clear sky. I just have one more. It's called Cognitive Therapy, and it's recent, and I just kind of wrote it during the pandemic. But it's kind of cognitive therapy. Under the wide plaster arch, the Pacific speaks in front of me. While camping, I dream of a forest canopy, leaves singing to birds swaying, and I awake to a canopy of leaves singing to birds swaying. Fog surrounds the apartment. I open the window and it fills the room as we walk around it laughing. Breathe some universe into your veins. Imagine having birds inside your mind. 500,000 years from now, the first 10,000 of human history will be taught in one paragraph. Spiritual awakenings, technological leaps. So relax. There is an interlocutor inside your mind, after all, who will ask all the right questions for your eloquence to flow. The bus's silhouette elevates through Nordic mountains, with sun rising as a woman splits a sandwich with a man. A man, 88 years old, upon meeting his great-grandson, for the first time remembers his father rubbing his back to sleep when he was 11 months. Standing on a craggy summit, he sees his past, a small lake in the distance, the future like the sun reflecting on the bows and bends of a river. Y ese brillo entre los arbustos es el ojo de una rata o un reflejo de una gota de agua. I cut July with scissors into paper stars for the ceiling. Thank you.
So gorgeous. Thank you, Paco. And we are down to our final three readers of the night. Next up is Holly Mitchell. Holly is a poet from Kentucky, now living in New York. She received an MFA in creative writing from New York University and has poems in Paper Bag, Juked, and Baltimore Review, among other journals. Please welcome Holly Mitchell.
Hello. Thank you, Sarah, and all the poets who workshopped and read and wrote poems together this last crazy semester. I'm going to read first a poem that I drafted in an office hours class, Catherine Barnett, back when we were meeting in person. Phone call. Lest I preach to you with less in my arms, lest I forget my recycling is 2 bins in the basement, and yours a facility half an hour from home, lest I remember too much or too little of what you say. I save your voicemails, your just wanteds and sorry eyes, while finding less and less time free for fear that the luster of looking out the window may one day betray me. lest brush fire skirts your fields, or a space heater sparks, lest the bush hogs rest to stillness, or all my tools fit in a cabinet, lest the cattle horns be sawn off, and house cats declawed, lest we graze upon gravel and the nettles in the grass. And these next two I workshopped with the group. Days in April. Everyone expected her breath to stop 2 days sooner. When I left her flying home, Mamu was still alive. I began my first permanent job and she died around 10:30 a.m. as I stood in the office dinette in my 2 formal clothes. My mother held her hand and reapplied her pink lipstick. My grandfather wept and clutched his thermos of watery coffee, kept together by his Cambry and Vasque boots and wool cap. I know this because I'd slept on the hospital floor. In my ignorance, I wasn't afraid to see her, her breath lengthened yet shallow with morphine. We were instructed not to call it morphine audibly, but of course we slipped up, and of course I'm changed. I look out of frames far more rigid than myself, practicing switched and square and alternate nostril breath. For 3 days, I stayed with her as my offering, a homing in Georgia, her eyes closed for breath. And I'm going to close with a cinto, which is a poetic form which collages lines from another's work. And this one is entirely composed of lines from Matthew Rohr's 2020 book, The Sky Contains the Plans. 1. By accident, here I am again over someone's shoulder. You can see as you walk while still thinking. The whole city is a camera and you can break it. Brooklyn Jew night replaced with silence. The traffic circles stretching in every direction. While pulling apart, I always feel briefly. The sun is a cruel master in different voices. The light grows older, expands if you stare at it. Then you have a real war eating at the lungs of people. But I am hidden in the lonely sound of a room at night, drinking a whiskey with long silences, just taking up your own space as it comes apart slowly. Does that mean denying yourself things? Wounded crab on the table, a great feeling of freedom. The imagination, sad flute in a dream I had, and marbled old pastries and drink. Accoutrements for one endless teacup. I can't say I know that. The mist pulls away from the bridge because we decided not to. 2. From each little piece of your vision, I dragged this thing, but I really thought about it. I was talking when another neighbor started talking. There was an indistinct loudness I wrapped myself in, a frayed rug, and filing, organizing really. I realized this agreed with me as they sang. I made a little program of the hyper-acquisitive, and when I wasn't thinking, I hefted my axe and slammed it, drinking a lot with classmates. I just felt and wrongly felt comforted floating there all night. I said what I could see. In the rain and thinking, I found you. Little snatches of song still there, a bird's shadow across the water in your eyes. I couldn't stop thinking no matter how long I looked. I observed with a smile all night the strange lights, motioning us to go through the crowds of people. And we stopped at a diner, which I'd read about. Thanks again.
Thank you, Holly. Love that cento. It makes me want to try the form. Okay, our next reader is Linda Harris Dolan. Linda is a poet, editor, and educator in Brooklyn. She's a teaching artist through artworks at Hassenfeld Children's Hospital, and she holds an MA in literature and an MFA in poetry from NYU, where she was a Starworks Creative Writing Fellow. Her work appears in Barrow Street, the Brooklyn Review, Cordella, and No Dear, among others. Please welcome Linda.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura and Sarah and Greg, especially, and all of Office Hours for being this wonderful creative community amidst the fact that we can't meet in person. I will be reading a few poems tonight from my manuscript, For Now We Know in Part, which is tracing my family's genetic heart disease through the generations and to me. Where do genetic mutations come from? That is to say, there's a problem in the beta-myosin heavy chain in a gene that directs the major protein of the cardiac muscle for the cardiac contraction. That is to say, amino acid substitution, no in utero moment formed correctly, silico analysis, pathogenic, functional importance, residue, the sarcomere, the filament. Over years, it compensates till it cannot. All that buildup, like a bicep, a tricep, a hamstring. The wall of the heart thickening, one malformed cell atop another, a scattered structure scarring, a myocardial disarray. Our Floor, 2012. Dr. Bergen, with the personal, impersonal eyes of one who knows everything and all of us and me. You have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and we talk about it calm. There are still 2 feet between his chair and mine, between his body and mine, but he is leaning forward and he's really, though not actually, holding my hand when he says, "Will you be okay? Do you have someone to drive you?" I drive to the cemetery and read the results to Dad and lay face down on his grave. Dad, 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 Dad. Then I call Uncle Billy. He's waiting anyway. We sit at the table my granddad was born on, the table this all was born on. Billy stands, walks to the door. You know, it's one thing for this disease to be in your dad and me, but it's so disappointing to be in you girls. He steps down into the mudroom. You just hoped it'd get diluted out somehow. It's night and the mudroom light is dim around him. I stand in the doorway he just walked through. You know, Linda, the day I got my diagnosis, it wasn't hard at all to come tell your dad. I knew he was up here at the farm working down at the Carson barn, and I just drove down there, got out of the van, and told him what it was. The hard thing was coming here to the house to tell Mom. Partly, you know, because it had come from her generation. My husband, Chris, asked that I come home a week early. My husband, Chris, wants to drive the 8 hours to see me at my self-imposed Spotswood retreat. I say that seems like such a big hoopla, no reason at all. The next morning, I can't get up at 6. I barely get up at 9. My cousin Karen calls. I say, I don't see why I feel so shocked. I knew all along. I sit at the table. I watch the patches from the prism, 3 spots along the floor, and it's surprising how, despite the overgrown brush outside, that prism still makes rainbows each mid-morning on the floor. I fall asleep in Granddad's chair. I wake up, grab the blanket off of Grandma's chair, drape it over me, and fall asleep in Granddad's chair. There are men, and we are on a quest. Chris and I, and maybe the girl cousins and my sister and my brother. Something has gone wrong, been lost or stolen. Some pertinent information is on a napkin, top secret or very dangerous or something. Then I'm back with the man in the generation above me to whom it all matters most. The one who is making us quest, the one who will pay the consequences if we fail, the Godfather sort of figure whose face and identity I can't recall yet in the dream, because earlier it had not been my father. But standing then in front of him, Dad looks at me. He's seated at Granddad's table and he's upset. He stands up, hits his fist down on the table and says, just find that napkin. You have got to find that napkin. Because the last thing in the world that I want is to get ill. Because the last thing in the world that I want is to get ill. least certain. Spread me thin across the city and the fields. Leave my cells flying from the back of a saddle. There are days I feel least your daughter. Case in point. At Cousin Doug's wedding, I'm 5 years old, Dad, and you are videoing people as they come down from the hill from the church to the old stone hall. I walk down the hill with Cousin Karen. I see you behind the camera. I start running to you. Hi, Daddy. Hi, Daddy. Hi, Daddy. Hi, honey. How you doing? Fine. Will you go up and speak to those people right over there? See that Greer Patterson is over there. Go over there and say hi to him. Right over there. Run over that way. No, I don't go. Linda, go up there where Mama is. Look where Mama is. Go up there and speak to those people. Run. I don't respond. I'm off camera. Then I don't want to talk to people. I can't contain my own pain so much in this world, least your daughter. So many people I day to day neglect. This is my final one. Where do genetic mutations come from? After the pink peonies die, their heads droop. Petals begin their falling, but for days, the flower heads remain mostly intact. So when I lift one toward the sun, it unfolds like a cascading fountain, brilliant petals to the pebbled ground where they lay, jewel-toned species of their gorgeous own, long after, long after. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. That was great. All right, now we are down to our final reader of the evening. Last but not least is Mary Block. Mary lives and writes in her hometown of Miami, Florida. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Best New Poets 2020, Rhino, Nimrod Journal, and Sonora Review, among other publications. Her work can be found online at Swim, Everyday, Rattle, Aquifer, and elsewhere. She is a graduate of New York University's Creative Writing Program, a 2018 Best of the Net finalist, and a 2012 finalist for the Ruth Lilly Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, and a Pushcart Prize nominee. Please welcome Mary.
Thank you so much, Laura. Being a part of this group has been really one of the small blessings to come out of this time. I went to NYU and met Sarah, the founder of Office Hours there, but I have since moved home to Miami with my family. So I never would have been able to be a part of this group had it not gone online. And it's just really, it's been an extraordinary experience for me. I'm going to read this first poem is about living in Miami. It's called Love from the Outer Bands. I was expecting more barometrically. I thought I'd feel the weather in my bones by now, but here we are, making cocktails, making fun of ourselves for getting so scared of what has amounted to intermittent rain. We've been riding the ragged edge of a crisis all day. Through nap time, through screen time, the storm's been slamming the abacos, wailing on someone whose choices mirror mine, who's wrapped her family in sheetrock and shingles and prayed. Today, she's the one who woke up to the whistle. She's the one on the top bunk, watching the ocean come up through the floor, and I'm the one making jokes about building my life in the Gulf Stream. I'm the one sending kisses to people up north from the cone of uncertainty. Love from the outer bands. This next one is the one that's in Best New Poets, and they've asked us to promote it. So this is it. It looks like this. This is called After Redman and the Safari Collection Brochure. Like a bird in a restaurant, I've been transformed by the walls around me into a filthy thing, a hovering problem who moves too fast and doesn't know how to leave. Like the 10-foot alligator caught in a Clearwater kitchen, hissing and thrashing around in a puddle of red wine and glass. I've been monstrously wrong. My fury's gone viral. My body's been made absurd for its size and its suffering, made available to subscribers. Like the herd of giraffes with their heads through a hotel window, I want my beauty back. I want to understand my rights on either side of a given partition. If a window implies permission, turns me into the freaky background of someone else's vacation photos, I want to know before I let myself get too close. This is the first pandemic poem that I've been able to write, and it's one that I brought into the workshop. So again, extraordinary gratitude to the Office Hours crew. This is called A Fish with an X for an Eye. I bought sardines instead of anchovy fillets, but I was too far into the recipe to stop when I saw jellied spines emerging as I stirred, the skin weeping off the fish in withered hunks, some ochre organ revealed by the saute process, cooked now and needing care at this very moment. I'm suddenly totally out of control of my dinner and totally aware that there is nothing I can do about the hookworms in the heels of American babies tonight, the refrigerated trucks stacked high with mothers right here where we're all guaranteed the right to die alone. I have a job. It is to make an American dinner for me and my children, all of us living with something awful, something dead in the house. An animal must have died in the attic. We must have a hole somewhere. We're all beside ourselves and gathered around this horrible meal I've made for my cartoon family. A foamy mound, a fish with an X for an eye. We're living inside the smell, the profound lack of care and due diligence right here at home. And this is one I like to end with because it's sort of funny. It's less of a downer than some other poems I've written. It's called As If. So this is the final poem of the night. As if. 2 permits equaled a license, and you could kiss your former brother and have it be no big deal. Like Polonius said, be true. To who? The lonely girl with her lunch, a bull in some kind of shop eating cold cuts and crackers, an Andes mint, a cross section of the populace shopping the blondest clothes, the best bodies wafting cucumber melon and cool water through the mall, explaining it all. How the store got its name, the feeble democracies of the global South, their rates of banana production. Be true to her. You can catch her at 3:35 and 6:05 Eastern, crushing caffeine pills, excited and scared at the same time. Tell her the money's in syndication. Tell her we're made to be remade. The housekeeper used to be the taxi driver. Tell her to answer the door in her towel when he knocks so he knows who's the boss. Thank you.
Love a Polonius reference. Thank you, Mary. Thank you to all of the readers, and thank you to the audience. Thank you for joining us on this Friday night. Thank you, Greg, for hosting us, and Sarah. Sarah, I'm going to pass it over to you now so you can let us know about all the things coming up. But thanks so much, everyone.
Absolutely. I'm like overwhelmed by the wealth of poems and community. Like, you're all out of control. It's beautiful. So I just want to remind us that we have some upcoming events. On December 31st, we're hosting a virtual broadside fundraiser exhibition. So we're selling brand new poetry broadsides that we've commissioned to raise funds to pay our poetry fellows. So if you enjoyed what you heard tonight, you can purchase a broadside and support these writers directly. We'll have more information on our website for that. Also, I want to say in spring 2021, Nicole Wallace and Laura Esther Wolfson are going to teach free craft classes. Those classes are funded in part by poets and writers. Shout out to them for being amazing. And I just want to say a really special thank you to Greg, who's been giving us a home, whether, brick and mortar or on this crazy thing we call the internet. But we love you, and Thank you for creating this space for us.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Sarah. And Sarah forgot to mention that she'll be reading with us again on Thursday, the 17th. And that's going to be actually quite a group. So please check that out on our website, bgsqd.com. And we so look forward to hosting you again in person. It's going to come. We're going to get there. So keep being kind to yourselves and others. Keep breathing. And I hope to see you all soon. And I'll post this online. So if you know anyone who missed it, send them the recording. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.